Demon Slayer. It's one of the most popular anime of all time, and has captured mainstream attention with its cinematic and jaw-dropping animation. The first Demon Slayer movie, Mugen Train, is currently the highest-grossing film ever released in Japan. And with the first of a trilogy of films to complete the story releasing this week, all eyes are on Demon Slayer to deliver an incredible finale. Despite its huge success, critics often question whether the story and characterization of Demon Slayer is deserving of the high praise, or whether the incredible animation does all the heavy lifting. For this podcast episode, we're analysing what made Demon Slayer such an incredible success, as well as some of its common criticisms. We're joined by screenwriter and returning guest Gerald Lillywhite as we venture back into the dark and fascinating world of Demon Slayer. Before we dive in, I just want to thank this episode's sponsor, 5 Star Games. You can check out Demon Slayer Hinokami Chronicles 2 on pretty much any gaming platform. We'll be back later in the episode to tell you more about it. Well, hello, and welcome back to Gateway to Anime. How are you all? What's going on? We are the podcast where we bring you the best new anime, as well as deep dive into the classics. I, as always, am your host, Sam, and I am joined by my sister, Charlie. Charlie, how are you today?
I'm good. Excited to talk about something that is very relevant to current anime fans, as we've got a big release coming out in the cinema, and I'm excited to get into that. And we've got a really exciting guests as well. So keen to get chatting.
Yes. So if people who have listened to this podcast quite a bit remember, I made quite a bit of a song and dance about one of our most returning and favorite guests, Gerald Lillywhite, departing to the United States of America. We made a whole thing of like, well, this might be a last time of the podcast, but of course, the internet does indeed exist and we know how to use it. So we are joined by Gerald Lillywhite from LA to talk all about Demon Slayer. Gerald, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. The foreign correspondent on the ground, beaming in. No, thanks for having me back. All hail the internet.
Indeed. So I've got a little story for you, actually, and I think you'll appreciate this. So we're at Smash Convention. So for anyone who's not from Australia, Smash Convention is Australia's biggest anime convention. And Graham and I, we're doing what we always do. You can check out the videos on our YouTube. We do event coverage. And we were walking through the floor of Smash Convention, and this guy came up to us, and I got shout out right here to CA, one of our number one fans who we absolutely love and adore. And he came up to us out of nowhere. He's like, "Oh, Gateway to Anime. Hello. Yo, Gerald Lillywhite, blah, blah, blah." And Graham went, "Gerald Lillywhite?" The last name I was expecting to hear dropped on the floor of SmashCon. But Gerald, your name is still echoing through the hallowed halls of anime in Australia. So there you go. Thank you to CA too. You're an absolute superstar.
Very surprising, but nice to hear.
He said that you're his favorite guest and his favorite episodes. Oh. So there you go.
Oh, sorry, everyone else that has given their time to us and come onto the podcast.
Well, you've got me blushing right off the bat. So if that guy ever needs a kidney, he knows who to call. Just track me down. I don't need two.
So, of course, as Charlie mentioned, we have Demon Slayer Infinity Castle Part 1 releasing in the West in Australia. At the time of this episode's release, it will be out this week on the Thursday. We will have already seen the premiere at IMAX. Thank you to Sony and Crunchyroll for that. And Charlie's actually already seen it. Spoiler, that's why she did a review. Again, thank you for the advanced screening that we got. Well, I haven't seen it because I wanted to save myself for the IMAX. Charlie has seen it, but I may have to do some because we're also doing a little interview with some of the English voice actors, which I will have to watch the movie for. So I'm very excited about that. But
also, check out my review on Infinity Castle, spoiler free, out now. Link in bio.
That's it. Check it out. So, Gerald, we wanted to get you on because obviously Demon Slayer is, without being overly dramatic, a cultural phenomenon. It really is. It is the 7th highest selling manga of all time. Sold 222 million copies, just behind Naruto at 250, and a fair way ahead of its next competitor in Slam Dunk, which is 185 million copies sold. So it's pretty well ensconced in 7th and may well move up past Naruto. It's huge. And I guess we wanted to talk about this because it's such a huge landmark, these movies. Like Mugen Train, obviously the number one selling movie in Japan of all time, number one anime movie, number one Japanese film in box office history so far. Infinity Castle may well pass it. But this is how big this is. Now, it's interesting because a lot of people tend to denigrate this show. Quite a lot, actually. Because people think that it's a basic story. They think that it's like very simplistic, very shonen-esque. and that it's hard carried by its unbelievable adaptation by the extraordinary and almost peerless UfoTable, which is one of the probably best animation studios on earth. So, Gerald, we wanted to talk to you because you actually have Demon Slayer in your top 10 animes of all time. And Gerald, anyone who knows this, you're a learned man, Gerald.
Yeah, I wanted to get Gerald on here so badly because I was like, we have an anime group chat. I bet you're all jealous, and Sam asked us to list our top 10. And, everyone was doing the boring shit. Like, we're like Brotherhood, Berserk, all the Neon Genesis, like all that millennial eye roll stuff that is really good and I stand by. But Gerald really shocked me with a rogue Demon Slayer in the top 10. And I was like, well, I got to hear about that. Like, come on, defend yourself. So here we are. And I like Demon Slayer, don't get me wrong, but top 10, that's a big call.
It's fair. It's fair. Look, I put it in the list. I have to own it. And so I won't throw like a bunch of caveats. What I will say is, if anyone in their lives has ever been asked like what their favorite movie is on the spot, and just the level of like mental paralysis that you go into trying to find an answer to that question. And when we were making these lists in the group chat, the avalanche of anime that's good anime that you can choose to kind of contend for places on that list, such that it was really hard to make a call. And there was one, as a little teaser, there was one category that had me putting a Demon Slayer in the top 10. I will say it was before season 4, and we'll get to that. But no, big fan of Demon Slayer. And to launch or to jump into why, let me just say that fantasy shonen anime is kind of up there for like peak anime experience for me. Like it may have been Cowboy Bebop that had me going back to the video store for the first time. It might have been Neon Genesis that had me like considering it as an art form for the first time. But it is fantasy shonen anime that I think delivers an experience that is almost unique to the form. Other forms try and do it, but not as well. And that is the hype moment. In my life, I've seen anime go from being like this fringe thing that the likes of you and I would go and collect our friends' burned DVDs to go and watch, to something that is being championed by, for example, recently the LA Dodgers had One Piece night, where this whole like baseball stadium was celebrating anime. And what is the element of anime that is penetrating the mainstream, that has got people up in support or watching things for the first time? It is this same quality, right? It is the hype moments. We're all in a group chat together, and these guys have to suffer through the never-ending series of links that I post where sports people, because I'm a sports nut, cross over into my other interest of anime, like Premier League soccer stars that kick a goal and do like the Aaron bite or do something from shonen anime. So this like idea of fantasy shonen anime as hype, and that being this like aesthetic experience, that this emotional experience, that doesn't matter if you're having the worst day ever, you throw on the Gaara fight and, things may be okay. It was this kind of this currency, this side of things that had me like really leaning into Demon Slayer, because for me, whilst there is, the shonen anime that like most launched for me is like Naruto, Brotherhood, of course, Dan is recently up there. What else is on this list? I mean, Dragon Ball, obviously, Jujutsu Kaisen, Hunter x Hunter, all these incredible animes. Somewhere in that list for me is Demon Slayer. I guess we'll get in today all of the bits and bobs about why that is.
It's interesting because you're right. Hype is one of the big reasons we watch anime, right? There's no question. We recently did a Naruto episode with the other member of this group chat, Alex Williams, of course. Shout out, one of our other big guests. And obviously, the thing we talked about was Rock Lee versus Gaara. Seeing that as like a teenager and just having my mind absolutely blown by the hype. Because as you say, other art forms try and do it, they don't do it as well, right? And that was my first time. I mean, obviously I'd seen the Dragon Ball Z fights with the, Goku screaming and going Super Saiyan and stuff. That's cool. But this was different. It hit different. And Demon Slayer does something similar. Now, I think it's fair to say that UfoTable's extraordinary adaptation makes a difference, right? There's no question about that. It does elevate the material. I don't think any serious-minded person can make that argument in the negative. Like, it definitely elevates the material. But what I will say is when watching shonen, will sometimes when I hit, the end of an anime season, will go and read the manga when I can't possibly bear not to know what happens. Now, I did it for Attack on Titan, obviously did it for Bleach, did it for Naruto, like all these big shonens with the long-running series. Didn't do it for Jujutsu Kaisen, but I did do it for Demon Slayer. So, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the manga. Now, a lot of people criticize it, saying it's basic and simple, and like it's the art style is nowhere near as sophisticated as what UfoTable adapted into, but it held me for some reason. The story is simple, yes, but effective. What do you think, Charlie?
I think it does hype pretty much better than any modern anime does.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great call because even me, who's not the biggest Demon Slayer fan, I will watch it. Like, it's a guaranteed watch for me, which is rare because, we're busy and we watch a lot of anime all the time. And someone's got to watch the oh no, I woke up with a vampire boyfriend and 20 kids. So I have to do that.
Shifts, Charlie.
But, I always make sure I'm watching Demon Slayer. And there's got to be a reason why. And it's because I know that something hype and cool is going to happen. I know exactly what it's going to do. And it does just tick all those boxes of the reason why I got into anime in the first place. It is classic textbook shonen. And it just benefits from a wonderful adaptation, as you said. Yeah. It makes you think what Black Clover could have been if it was adapted by UfoTable and not and not just episodic and instead of seasonal. It's really cool. And obviously it works so well because of the elemental breathing styles work with that kind of marriage of 3D and 2D and that old school art style that comes into the modern. It's just it's very cool. We got swords. We got captains. It's got everything. So no wonder we enjoy it. Yeah. Although I'd love to pick your brain about season 4.
We'll get to season 4. Don't worry. I'm glad you brought up Black Clover because it illustrates kind of the first point that I would make, or not rebuttal, because obviously everyone's contextual experience of media is their own and think what you think. But for me, after that first wave of big shonen animes, right? I have to cop. I've never seen One Piece. I get 60 episodes in 3 times and I fall off. And I know if I just push through, it's all there waiting for me, and I have faith that one day I will. But for me, it was Naruto, right? Naruto of that first 3, that was the real genre originator. And when I contextualize tropes, it's often shonen tropes. It's often Naruto and Full Metal Brotherhood that I'm orientating around. And so my experience of the Demon Slayer story is this kind of intertextual thing where it's a second and third wave shonen, right? It shares the company of Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen and all of these other kinds of texts that were taking what Naruto and One Piece and Bleach did, and we're trying to find their new spin to differing levels of success. Whereas Demon Slayer, and I think quite rightly, took a different line, which is, how can I give you all of the things that you love about Naruto in this kind of new, exciting package? Because unfortunately, we can't watch Naruto for the first time again. That's only something you get once. And so there is something really valuable to me about a show that can give me that experience all over again. And for mine, what I would say to people that accuse Demon Slayer of being too simple, it's it manages to deliver on all those things, in my view, without being derivative. Whereas Black Clover, I cannot watch, and I'm sorry for the Black Clover stans, because that one to me takes everything that is good about shonen and just in a slightly, ever so slightly too derivative a way, gives it to you. So I don't know what the alchemy is here. The Demon Slayer didn't give me that sensation of artifice, whereas something like Black Clover does. I'm sure we'll hear about it in the comments, but that was just my reading.
I think it's to do with the adaptation. I do.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Not the source?
Yeah. to be honest.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
But I think I do agree with you. I prefer Demon Slayer for sure. And they are, I mean, I think they're a couple of years apart, if not at least 6 or 7 years apart.
Yeah, Black Clover was beforehand.
As in even the source material.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I do think that it's right to say that Demon Slayer is definitely taking that and become more evolved in that way, the new shonen that we're kind of seeing, which I like the trend where we're going. So I do
totally.
agree. But I do think that it would be a bit different if we had like a stunning adaptation of Black Clover.
Yeah.
Defending Black Clover here.
We don't have to. We won't get too sidetracked by putting the boots into Asta or whatever his name is. But and so to follow on with that point, like for mine, what Demon Slayer does really well is the basics of shonen, which are simple and are recognizable, but are still really hard to pull off. Like you can get them wrong. It gets you emotionally invested in that. Like in Tanjiro, we have this protagonist that we're rooting for. Just in case there are a few people out there that haven't seen Demon Slayer, should I just quickly run through the premise?
Please do.
So, set in kind of the earliest 20th century, this teenager Tanjiro and his mum and his siblings are kind of living in the woods, and they're scraping out this living, selling coal. They're poor, but they're happy. Only one day, Tanjiro comes home to find that a demon has killed his entire family. Actually, there's one survivor, his sister Nezuko, except now she's a demon too. And that sucks because that same bloodthirst that just killed his entire family is now present in his sister. And just as things couldn't get more complicated, this mysterious stranger arrives who's a member of the Demon Slaying Corps, a group that is committed to wiping the demons from the face of the earth. And he's too late to save the family, but he's going to kill Nezuko. Only Nezuko does something that no one's ever seen a demon do. She manages to contain this bloodlust, and Tanjiro is convinced that he can find a way to cure his sister. So how does he go about achieving that end? Well, Tanjiro is going to join the Demon Slayer Corps himself, rise up through the ranks, fight the demons, and then hopefully one day find a way to cure his sister Nezuko. And so even in that breakthrough, you can kind of see all of the components of a strong kind of shonen are beginning to emerge. This protagonist that's really easy to root for. We understand the mountain that he's going to try and climb, this idea of growth through struggle. And I put a big asterisk next to that because I think as we see anime connecting with the mainstream, that general theme is something that resonates with everyone. It's got a world that's interesting and hierarchical. Demons, how they work, Demon Slayer Corps, the Hashiras, even the fact that it's set in the past is a really unique kind of shonen element. There's a cool power system. There's a great big bad. I don't care what anyone says, moves and rules.
Yeah, I love him.
This wider cast that we invest in to differing degrees, and we can kind of get into that. And when all of this comes together, you get these hype moments, and so I think it's not reinventing the wheel, but it is doing the basic simple sophistication stuff really well. And to go back around to the top where I said when I was making this list, what was the thing that was in my head? And it was, what is the show that when it's airing, I'm most looking forward to watching? And it is Demon Slayer, because that whilst it's not perfect, it is going to deliver those hype moments.
100%. And also just to contextualize just how big of a cultural phenomenon it is. I mean, I kind of did at the top, but even more so. The whole franchise made over $9.32 billion, placing it ahead of Fortnite, Thomas the Tank Engine, Mario. Demon Slayer has made more money than the Mario franchise, which is insane. It's also made more than the Lord of the Rings franchise. Okay, this is crazy numbers, right? And it's just behind James Bond, Grand Theft Auto and Jurassic Park. That's the level of cultural impact that, I mean, a lot of it's obviously out of Japan, but still, that is crazy numbers. Absolutely crazy. And I think you're right. The hype moments are just
Is Thomas the Tank Engine considered a great big money maker? Why was that the second
How many
option?
children have like watched that show for
That's true.
50
That's
years?
true. It's just
you know
you were
what I
like,
mean? Like it's
you're like
well, I
Lord
mean,
of the Rings,
merchandising
Thomas the Tank
sales wrapped
Engine.
up in
I was
that.
going down the list. But yeah, it's crazy when you think about it.
I want to just jump on a point that I think that one of the things that makes Demon Slayer, to me, like one of the best parts about it is the setting of a Taisho period.
Taisho period, yeah.
Which is like that very interesting kind of like marriage between, it's like we've got like modern cities, or modern cities for the time. There's like electricity, but there's still kind of, that more like old school
Edo period type,
kind of
the
like
samurai.
I think it's like a very interesting time in history for Japan, and like all the architecture and everything is just like, it's a really great setting for this show. And I think it's a huge part of why aesthetically it's very pleasing and why it works so well.
Well, yeah, there's obviously the samurai. I mean, the Hashira and the Demon Slayer couldn't be more samurai coded if they tried. Like they're basically samurai. And of course, as you say, we're in this interesting period of change,
Industrial
revolution,
yeah.
Meiji Restoration, sort of at the tail end of the Meiji Restoration, moving into the 20th century. And so, yeah, you've got trains and you've got electricity and you've got these things, but you've also got these badass swordsmen living in these semi-feudal kind of villages as well, like the swordsmith arc. Obviously, is a very feudal sort of context and setting. So is Tanjiro's backstory, obviously, living in a mountain in a hut collecting charcoal. It's very, very like feudal kind of experience. But that is what makes it definitely interesting and very fascinating, because it is a fascinating period in Japanese history, obviously in a complete fantasy setting and context. The episode that really got me, when I watched it when it first came out in 2019, we're going back a bit too, 2019, before the big COVID anime boom. And I remember a lot of people just being like, dude, this show rocks, hey, like, and I never forget the episode. It was episode 19, which I think a bit, you know what it reminds me of? Episode 17, Naruto, when the Demon Fox first comes out against Haku. That was the experience. Going back to your point, Gerald, about making you feel those feelings that we hadn't had really. I mean, we have Attack on Titan did it many times as well, but like having that feeling of episode 19 where you were just like jaw on the floor animation, like honestly, some of the best animation like I've ever seen, level with One Punch Man season 1 stuff. You're just like, whoa, okay. And it was
wait
a
for
beautiful
Infinity
sequence.
Castle.
Yeah, I'm so excited for Infinity Castle. Yeah, I will be watching it soon. But it does give you those moments, and people want to sit there and say it's basic and simple. But like, I'm sorry. At the end of the day, maybe I am, and heaven forbid I feel something. Heaven forbid I should feel something in this world.
God forbid you like the thing.
I'm a human being, Gerald, as are you, and as is you, Charlie.
I was gonna say I really do forgive a lot of Demon Slayer's faults for the hype moments.
Yeah.
So, I'll go, it's like I described season 4 as like, I imagine what it would be like giving birth, where you kind of like, you're having a bad time, and then you get to that final episode and you're like, is this the best thing ever? Like I forget. It's like, I don't know what that phenomenon is called, and I apologize to everyone who's giving birth. But in that, I think that's because I kind of just went, oh my gosh, that was the best thing I've ever seen. As in the ending of season 4 was one of the best, most hype moments I could think of.
Ever.
I think I went for a run. I've done that twice in anime. Like I've never done that in my life, but I did run. Like,
and I guess this is like the point I'm going to keep laboring, that this is anime doing something that, in my opinion, nothing in the world does as well as anime. Marvel will spend $1 bazillion to make 14 movies to try and land a hype moment that hits like half as hard as the ending of season 1 Demon Slayer, because that moment with Rui, with the fire breathing, with all of it, it is the sum of a lot of the fondness that I have for Demon Slayer, I have to say, and we'll get to this soon, is because that first season is so tight. Spoiler, I think every season gets worse from that one. But season 1, the economy and the depth of Tanjiro's struggle, of him trying to get to that point and you being emotionally invested in him doing it and them not rushing that, I think was just excellent along those lines of what an anime hype moment can be. Because if it doesn't feel earned, and this is the thing, like what makes a good hype moment for me, it's that currency of struggle. And if you don't feel like they have earned it, you don't feel it. And by the end of season 1, you really feel like Tanjiro has earned it. And to skip forward to season 4, like part of why, had I written that list today, Demon Slayer may have been like maybe not making it to the 10th and final place, is because they forget about struggle in season 4, don't they? Like for a show that was all about him doing what needed to be done to learn to be the ultimate demon slayer. By the time season 4 comes around, an exam arc, Charlie. It's the Hashira training arc. It's like designed to be about struggle. And what happens? Like our boy, he just breezes. There is no conflict until the final episode.
100%. It's a huge problem with that, and you're right. It's trying to do the thing that we pine for, the exam training arc, which we've seen countless times in shonen anime, and we wanted it. We wanted it to be good, and it just unfortunately wasn't. But last episode did indeed save it, because that is still to this day one of the best episodes of television anime I've ever seen in my life.
Agreed.
Look, also there's push and pull, there's tension and release, and I guess why it's not so great is because it should be a tense period of time, but you're right, he just walks through it like it's nothing, which is kind of boring. But what I will say is interesting about Demon Slayer is the four main sort of characters are obviously Tanjiro, Inosuke, Nezuko, and Zenitsu. But what I do like about it, and I won't spoil anything because obviously I've read the whole manga, but it should be pretty obvious, they don't become the most powerful, right? They don't. They are always struggling. And I will say that's something I do like about Demon Slayer. Yes, there are random power-ups. Again, you mentioned with Rui in season 1 with Hinagami Kakura, where he, gains the sun-breathing technique and whatnot. So those elements are still in there. But he doesn't all of a sudden become Space Jesus, like Naruto. You know what I mean? He is special. Obviously, there are elements there which, again, won't be spoiled, but he is a special character, so is Nezuko. But they don't become unfathomably strong, and Muzan, who is the king of the demons, is always placed as the strongest being in the universe, and he is and remains so the whole time. It's not a weird Gojo Sakuna thing, where it's Gojo's I'm the strongest and you establish he's the strongest. They try and do that better in Jujutsu Kaisen, but I think they kind of end up failing there. But at least Demon Slayer establishes his power system pretty early, and it doesn't break it.
Also, they're not I feel like they're often working together, which is kind of rare.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, obviously power of friendship isn't rare in anime and in shonen. But I mean there's often, they kind of, I like how they show the random Demon Slayer corps coming in and working together as well. They're kind of that system is kind of flawed. But
yeah, it's very stratified, but yeah.
But good for them.
Because the Hashira are essentially captains, right?
Yeah. What makes a good power system? I think more than anything else, it's limitations and costs, right? And going to your point, Charlie, about the setting being very interesting, there's this tension where there's this age-old good versus evil that's been going on since feudal times playing out next to this journey towards modernization that sees what's happening between the samurai and the demons as kind of irrelevant. And that kind of speaks to well, how do you get stronger in this world? Well, you have to learn the way of the sword, and there are these very, very few masters that remain that can teach people, so Tanjiro decides he's going to go into this journey. All of the knowledge isn't at his fingertips. There's a handful of people in the entire world that can teach him maybe what he needs to know, and so there's this feeling in the show that not only are the Demon Slayers losing because they've been whittling down and this passing on the knowledge through the generations is struggling, but yeah, it's not even with Naruto where he has access to Jiraiya and to some of the other seinen and stuff that can teach him what he needs to know. He's kind of on his own trying to figure out his special thing. He's so in the dark about what it is and how to use it, which is, which again makes it for a good limitation.
And also the struggle is real. The Hashira as well, they struggle, you know what I mean? The balance has been in the favor of the demons for 1,000 years. And it sort of remains so. I mean, obviously there's that wonderful end of season 4 where the master hatches that huge plan and whatnot. But that's sort of the first time, as I mentioned in season 2, which also I would argue is extremely strong, the Entertainment District arc.
Yeah.
I think it's outstanding. And some of the best animation ever as well. That fight is outstanding. And I think does balance its pacing relatively well. Starts a bit slow, but gets there. But that animation is just quite extraordinary. And you mentioned it earlier, Charlotte, the compositing is so great from what UfoTable do. So for those of you who don't know what compositing is, I'll give you a little quote here from a website called Studio Binder. Compositing is the process through which two or more images combine to make the appearance of a single picture. The composite process can be done in camera or during post, e.g. a weatherman with his little screen is compositing. But in animation process, this is from a website called Andios, the compositing animation process can range from the relatively simple task of merging two layers to the more intricate process of aligning and fine-tuning numerous layers. Considering factors such as depth of field and color adjustments, it is during the compositing phase that the animation attains its final professional experience. So, for example, in Demon Slayer, all of the flame breathing and water breathing and all of the elemental breathing styles, that's compositing with 3D being laid over the top of 2D, which, again, you've said before, 3D can be a real dirty word in the anime world, especially with Western fans, but UfoTable does this combination of 3D and 2D better than anybody else, pretty much in the world, I would say. And that is why it looks so extraordinary.
All of that, Sam, is a real fancy way of saying that every anime that I've watched after Demon Slayer kind of looks like trash. You know, like, I'm sorry. It just like ruins. UfoTable has like set an unrealistic level of expectation about what anime can look like. And I never used to be a guy that cared at all about how anime looked. Like, Sam, you and I love Legends of the Galactic Heroes, which pretty much looks like people have cut out characters and are moving them along the screen with their hands. And then all of a sudden, Demon Slayer just has totally sold me on what that level of attention to detail and effort can do in terms of elevating a story. Because you're right, it's just, you got to see it to believe it. It's incredible. And Charlie, I'm very jealous that you've seen the new movie, because I'm sure they have pulled out all of the stops.
Well, I mean, as I said in my review, and I won't say anything at all about it, but I do think when this movie was announced, that Infinity Castle is the setting, that compositing works so well with that, because it is like it's like it's its own character, and it's such an incredible thing. And so on the big screen, it works very well.
Speaking of Demon Slayer, we've been playing Hinokami Chronicles 2, which is the second installment of the Demon Slayer video game franchise. It is so much fun. It's like an action game. You can really test yourself online by battling other people with a huge array of characters. You can pick any Hashira, which is pretty dope, much more than the first game. And you can also play through the story. You get to play from the Entertainment District arc all the way up to the Hashira training arc. Running around the rooftops of the Entertainment District is one of the coolest experiences I've had in gaming in a while. The thing that I've found with Hinokami Chronicles 2 is that it's really faithful adaptation of the anime. The fact that you get to immerse yourself in a playable context in the Demon Slayer universe is super unique and super awesome. It is such a fun game and such a cool, fluid graphic experience. It looks stunning. It looks like you're basically playing the anime yourself. So if you want to go check out Hinokami Chronicles 2, you can find it pretty much on any platform. And thank you again to 5-Star for sponsoring this episode.
Another thing that makes Demon Slayer unique in its compositing is it kind of considers, like, unlike other anime, it considers the camera angles, like the camera is in the space with it. So it kind of gives that depth of field like other animes don't really do. And that's what gives that amazing kind of like, all those, I'm always just like, whoa, but that's the vibe. That's because of that depth of field there. And the way that they've done that is actually quite unique and very impressive and works very well. And I think that's what elevates it for me personally.
Well, it's the same, but if anyone's ever seen the Heaven's Feel, the Fate Heaven's Feel trilogy of movies that UfoTable also did, that was where they kind of really did it first. And yeah, it's right. It's like the blurry foreground and background with like obviously 2D image across 3D, and how the camera interacts in the space, because the art direction is quite extraordinary as well. And so is the fluidity of the movement. And again, you're right. It's because of the fact they took into account how the camera might perceive these animations, feeding into it, which is so fascinating. Because also, fun story, a huge amount of the 3D compositing at UfoTable is done by one guy, and that's their DOP, Yuichi Terao. So credit to that man for being a visionary.
Killing it.
I hope he's okay. I hope he's all right.
Some criticisms of Demon Slayer. We've talked about, obviously, the simple story that people deride, but also we have Nezuko as a character. And I mean, probably you could argue a lot of the female characters are pretty poorly written, but interestingly, something to consider is Gotouge, who is the mangaka. It's very, very private, like a lot of mangaka are. I mean, like something we can even talk about later, but like what's so fascinating is that when you consider like voice actors or seiyuu in Japan, they're rock stars. Not only are they like famous for being voice actors, some of them are literally also rock stars. But mangaka, probably because their work schedule is so crazy that they're pretty much sitting, slaving over a desk all the time, but they're very, very private. You know, even Oda, the most famous of them all, pretty much never turns up in public or shows his face. Gotouge, even more private. In fact, when they appear on any public appearance, they have an avatar, which is an alligator wearing sunglasses, which is pretty cool. But they've never revealed their gender, ever. And also, interestingly, just to also talk about the cultural impact, the first mangaka to ever be featured in Time's most influential 100 people back in 2020, which is quite a big deal. But going back to before, Nezuko. Gerald, you've got some thoughts on how that character is portrayed and represented.
Yeah, look, I mean, a lot's already been like written and said on this, and you know, it's by no means kind of like a deal breaker for me. Like, I can see how like what Nezuko is in the story, that is like someone who is like mute, essentially gets infantilized often as kind of this object of Tanjiro's purpose. You know, I have to save my sister, I have to protect my sister. She is a demon now, and so there are relationship conflicts in how we communicate and interact now as a consequence of this thing that's happened. Like, it makes all kinds of story sense. At the same time, you could make the argument pretty easily that shonen anime or manga has a bit of an issue when it comes to silencing women or sidelining or, you know, making them objects in a male character's story arc, you know. And so here's a character who is, in the most literal way possible, the absolute version of that. And so partner to that, I would say, if you're going to infantilize a character, I would overwhelmingly prefer you not to sexualize them at some point down the track. And Demon Slayer also has a few, in my opinion, kind of icky moments where that does happen. And so, I don't know, that's the caveat that I would say. The show is called Gateway to Anime. In recommending this to people, I find myself adding this caveat. So worth bringing up here.
100%, I agree with all of that. And yeah, as you say, in the most literal sense, like it couldn't be more obviously silencing a character. They're like, here's an actual like gag for the character. Like, yeah.
And you know what? Like, I want Nezuko's POV, you know, like, who's having the most unique experience here? It's the exception to the rule demon lady. Let me know what's going up from that perspective. But maybe that's what we've got to look forward to down the line. The one other thing I wanted to say that's like a strength of Demon Slayer, for me at least, relative to some of the other shonen anime, is that it's like a pretty tight story, like 12 arcs from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I'm a big, you know, obviously part of what attracts me to shonen storytelling is how wide the world building can get. You know, by the end of Naruto, 100 plus characters. But at the same time, there is something really refreshing about a bit of shonen storytelling that is deliberately being streamlined, that is saying, I'm going to take you from a really clear beginning, middle, and end, and you feel very safe in the storyteller's hands because there's no fat. It's all filler, no killer, no filler episodes. Every decision has been labored because they have actively chosen to use this like very small relative amount of time to tell the story. And I think that's unique and cool.
It is very economical because, I mean, obviously One Piece's strength is how broad and how insanely well built that world is. But the fact that Demon Slayer does kind of contain itself is actually, I think, a strength because I'm not going to have watched One Piece, so I can't judge its storytelling techniques. But like some shonens tend to meander and get a little bit lost and get a little bit confused. Demon Slayer, for all its faults, does not do that. It does not. So that is a huge, huge plus in its favor.
And so partner to that, I think it also dances a tonal line that the very best shonen do, right? Again, I keep going to Naruto as the example, but just because shared language and all the rest of it. But I can't speak for you. As much as the hype moments in Naruto rule, some of those like episodes or half episodes where they're just kind of palling around the village and it's just, the gang kind of bumping into each other and, outside of the filler episodes, which go a little bit too hard into that, it achieves that lightness. And I think that is a good counterbalance to the darker themes. And I think the Demon Slayer does that well. Some of my favorite parts of it are when in the aftermath of these big battles, and because they're all very vulnerable and human, obviously they're all in hospital recovering. And it's the shenanigans of, these boys that are recovering from fighting demons and the little quieter, lighter character bits that come from that. And I think, again, that's really hard to pull off, and Demon Slayer does it really well.
Agreed. And it goes back to the classic that pretty much most animes go, which is the triumvirate. We've got Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu. They're very well balanced. They are a funny. A lot of people can't stand Zenitsu. A lot of people love Zenitsu. It's interesting. I believe you're a Zenitsu fan, Gerald?
Answer to your crimes. I would say that I understand why he's a very divisive character. And, there are two types of people in the world. And for me, what I like about his character is that, it's Shinji getting the mech. Not everyone in the world wants to be the hero. And this kind of coward that gets, by a series of circumstance, offered this really rare opportunity to be trained by a master, but because of his very real character flaws, doesn't take advantage of it and forever lives his life in fear, continually being traumatized. Everything that happens kind of washes off Tanjiro like water off a duck's back, and that works in the context of his character. But I like that Zenitsu carries it and is increasingly traumatized through the story. And so, as a bit of flavor, as a bit of lightness, I do appreciate it. If your argument is that the way he is animated and the octave of his voice and is a little bit over the top for you, well, I won't put up too much of an argument there either.
I think also his I think people get kind of over his weakness towards women. He's kind of filling that like Jiraiya space of oh, maybe a bit much. But I gotta say, with Zenitsu, he's not my favorite character, but his moments make when he does something cool, I'm probably more hyped than it's just, I love that trope of like somebody who when like accidentally locked in, like it when we first see him do in the season 1, his
incredible.
It's his moment there. Like, that's one of my favorite moments in anime history. Like, it's so fun and cool. And you're like, oh, I get it. That it's a really strong payoff. It's just you have to kind of suffer through the rest of it to get that payoff.
And another criticism that gets leveled at the show, and again, it's a huge anime trope. It's not the first or last to do it, but is, of course, the flashbacks. And they're often utilized to make you feel sympathy for the demon. And we look back into their history of what they were as a human beforehand. And obviously Tanjiro being a very empathetic character, hard, but empathetic, often then feels some kind of, not necessarily affinity, but at least an empathy or sympathy for the demon and for what they were before being either forcibly or consensually turned into a demon themselves. I guess Demon Slayer is now famous for these sort of Naruto talk no jutsu style flashbacks.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like not even it's backstory. Like it's like the last minute. It's just, and it's because it follows the same formula every fight. I think in the show, like if from season 1 onwards, like every fight has that formula, which is like you'll know that you're gonna get. And then you're like, we're going to have 2 episodes of this random character's backstory that I've never met in my life. And like some of them work really well and some of them don't. And I think it's just depending on whether or not you are invested in this demon you've met for 1 episode or not. Like it just depends on where they sit within the character and the narrative arc to the success. But like, because it's every single one, it kind of becomes funny. You're sort of like, after a while, what's this guy's backstory? Like, as Graham once said on our podcast, like, oh no, his mum didn't love him. Like, that's the whole thing. And you're like, what? Like,
yeah. No, I think that's a really fair a fair criticism. Like I'm less against this idea of like what it brings out in Tanjiro. I just think that a protagonist who's just a nice guy, whose superpower is kindness, is A-okay with me. And I think they pull it off in this pretty well. But by season 4, we've seen a few of them, and it doesn't really, it's not adding enough and is interrupting that flow of dramatic tension and hitting the pacing issues. And yeah, I hear that. I imagine it inherited a lot from the manga there.
Yeah, big time. Well, Gerald, thank you so much for joining us all the way from across the seas. You can't get away from us that easy, Gerald. You're keep reeling you back in no matter where you go. But thank you. We always appreciate it. It's massive. And for everyone, the movie will be out this week at the time of release. So get out and see Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. Say what you want. I heard someone on Reddit, and maybe it was Instagram, say that this is basically the Avengers for weebs. And not wrong. Not wrong.
It's
pretty exciting. Before we finish up, just want to thank 5-Star Games, and you can play Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba Hinokami Chronicles 2 on pretty much any platform. We've been playing it on the Switch and having a grand old time, but you can also get it on PS5, Xbox, Steam, PC. And hey, enjoy it. We've been having a great time playing it, and it's a perfect time to do so in the lead up to Infinity Castle. So thank you, 5-Star Games, for sponsoring this episode. Hinokami Chronicles 2, get out there and play it wherever you can. Hey, Charlie, thank you. Gerald, thank you, sir. And of course, a pleasure. And if you like what we're doing, you can go find us over on Patreon, where we have unique special episodes just for the top tiers, as well as early releases and behind the scenes footage. And of course, if you don't follow us on Instagram, do so, or TikTok. And hopefully you're watching us on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast platforms, please give us a 5-star review and or written review on Apple. Really makes a difference. Anyway, Gerald, thank you. Charlie, thank you. And hey, it's Demon Slayer week. We're celebrating a festival of Demon Slayer. And hey, I'm hell excited. So
can't wait.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Catch you later, brother.
Thanks, Gerald.